Uuganaa Ramsay from Zavkhan Amig went to the United Kingdom on a teaching scholarship in the year 2000. Now, more than a decade later, she resides permanently in Scotland and is the best-selling author of Mongol, a moving memoir about her baby boy Billy, who was born with Down syndrome. Uuganaa's powerful book gives us an insight into her Mongolian upbringing, but mostly it's about the short life of her son and about a mother's grief. She skillfully educates readers about what it truly means to be a Mongol, which of course is a national identity, but also a derogative label used to describe people afflicted with Down syndrome.
First of all, I'd like to thank every one of you for coming out tonight to celebrate my book Mongol, and I know so many of you are part of this story, and you were at Billy's funeral, and you know, the story in this book in some ways will reflect the times that we spent together, working together, studying together, or sharing the same community.
Okay, then that's great. Thank you very much. I'll see you the next time.
And Billy passed away in February 2010. So when he passed away, I promised myself and him that I would make him live on people's minds. So I started writing a blog, writing to him. I needed the connection to be with him. So although it was an unusual way of coping with my grief, I wrote every week first, and then I realized if I write a book, it's more tangible, and a copy of every book in Britain is kept in the British Library. So that's what I wanted. I wanted my boy to be part of history in an archive, and years to come by people can read about him, and he existed.
Would you please tell viewers how this book came to be, what inspired you to write this book?
When I left Mongolia, I came across the word Mongol being used in different meanings, and they were different from the meaning that I grew up learning or knowing who Mongol was. And the first meaning was about Genghis Khan. People knew the history, maybe traveled, and they knew the 13th century Mongols, and that was the Mongols they knew. The second one is people who were told that now older generations, they think people with Down syndrome are called Mongols. So when they hear the word Mongol, they think of people with Down syndrome. And even though the term was stopped in 1960s, after 100 years, it was invented by a British doctor called John Langdon Down. It's still being used, you know, bad habits die hard.
It's used in a derogatory way.
Yeah, that's what I was coming to. The third meaning is the derogatory way, I'm afraid, and I think it started because of the meaning to do with Down syndrome, and people use the word Mongol and different variations of it now, Mong and Mongo, and Mongol, when they mean idiot or stupid, and like a swear word in some context. And these, you know, these incidents happen every day. Maybe not many people, but some people, still happening, and it's around the world in different countries.
I know I've read in your memoir, there's actually a comedian, a well-known comedian from the UK who uses this expression, and it really has angered you. Can you discuss this with us?
Yeah, in 2011, when I was writing my memoir, and I was very active on social media, using Twitter and others, and I came across this tweet: please, Mr. Ricky Gervais, don't use the word Mong. And basically he retweeted a tweet saying, two Mongs don't make a right.
Two Mongs don't make a right. I mean, that's...
and with silly pictures of himself. And people were really angry, you know, from different corners of the world, and it hurt me. And I felt I need to do something about it. And I found out about the term, how it started, and it was one person in 1860s, British John Langdon Down, this doctor, and in his opinion, it wasn't based on any scientific tests. It was totally observational term was born because he felt that people with Down syndrome looked like Mongols. And they were called Mongolian idiots. The term was born, and around the world different scientists and doctors followed, and the medical papers. And even though they dropped and finished, you know, changed the mind, it was too late. Yeah, so that's how it was spread.
And now you're doing something to stop it.
So that's why, because it started from one person, I thought, you know, I can't change the world, but I can have a go, and it can help maybe, you know, 1 or 2 or more than that. That would be great. And also, since I started talking about it, different Mongolians starting to get in touch with me, telling me their experience when they traveled to different countries. They came across this, and they were ridiculed. They felt made fun of, and there were confusions. So I felt also, as a Mongolian, I can come across from, you know, this angle as well, because what it means to us, the word Mongol means everything, you know, our culture.
It's something to be very proud of.
Yeah, something to be very proud of. Yeah, so that was another reason I thought I'll take on this. And this was causing confusion in medical diagnosis. If a child's parent were from, let's say, East Asian background, medical doctors were confusing that, you know, if they suspected Down syndrome, for example, they were getting confused because of their facial characteristics. And so I felt it needs to be highlighted that it's nothing to do with any race. It happens to every race in the world, in any country, to people of all ages and all ethnicities.
Pelotudo.
Mogólico.
Cuando lo decís, no estás insultando, estás discriminando.
ASDRA, Asociación Síndrome de Down de la República Argentina.
Thank you, Uuganaa, for explaining that. I mean, it's very hurtful, and I am sure most Mongolians, many Mongolians, aren't even aware of this derogatory term that's used around the world. And I hope that when people watch this, they're able to learn about this, and perhaps they can help spread the word and join forces.
Oh yeah, definitely. I really do hope so, because before I didn't know about it, and now we know about it. We can do something about it, and we can challenge people in, obviously appropriately, depending on the context. And some people are saying it without realizing the hurt and the offense they're causing, and it's very easily done. People are saying it to win friends, to be popular with their fans, for example. So we need to be aware that it's a very sensitive issue, and we can explain who Mongols are in a good way, nice way.
Exactly. Tell me what your childhood was like.
Yeah, I grew up in rural area in Zafran, and Sant Margaz, Som, and Ulyaste, the town.
How do you say that again?
Ulyaste.
Ah, okay. I've been saying it wrong for 3 years.
How did you say it?
Ullestad.
All right, Ullestad.
Ullestad.
Yeah.
Paella.
Ullestad. Well, when I was in my teens, animals were privatized. Democracy came.
When the Soviets left.
Yes, and my parents had animals, sheep, goats, cows, and
Were they
horses.
you came from a nomadic family?
No, my dad is a vet and my mum is a teacher. But my mum is from a horseman's background and my dad is from workman's background. So I didn't really know how to look after animals until in my teens, until animals were privatized, and according to how many members of the family, you get some animals. So suddenly we had these animals to look after. So during our summer holidays we used to move house beside maybe river or lakes. It was beautiful, and we used to milk cows, sheep and goats, making yogurt, riding horses, and I used to sing, on horsebacks, and I felt that was heaven.
Actually, I'm noticing it now. I can hear a tiny Scottish
yes.
Yes, twang. I'm picking it up now.
Yes, you can probably, yes, because after now 14 years, yes, I have Scottish,
I can
little
hear
bit
it.
of Scottish
Have
accent.
you got a Scottish kilt?
No, but our kids have, quite often they have Scottish, like school days and different dances, and so they have tartan dresses or tartan wares. I think another reason why my book was born is to let my kids know about my childhood in Mongolia, so they understand why their mummy behaves in certain ways sometimes, So yeah, and I would love to see my book turning into a film one day.
Yes. Listen, Uuganaa, this book, I'm looking at this camera. Have you published this yet in Mongolian? I know it's a bestseller on Amazon.com. Have you been able to publish this in the Mongolian language, your memoir? Is that a work in process?
Yes, it's a work in process. Yes, I'm thinking about it.
You must.
And of course, this book was mostly addressed to people outside Mongolia, like words like capital city, Ulaanbaatar. I don't need to say that, in the Mongolian version. So it would be an interesting one. But I started writing it, and my dad had a read, and because of the subjects, he cried. He was sad about, my son's death, for example. So I felt I need to pause, and when the time is ready, I will publish it.
And then film.
Then film, yes. I'm hoping. I'd love to see it on the screen.
Okay, now when you moved from Zafkhan to London in 2000, was that a huge transformation for you? I mean, how does a girl from Mongolia go to the big smoke in London, and how did you adapt? Did you miss your family? I mean, it happens to so many Mongolians. They go and, it must have been so different.
I went to London to do a teacher training course in year 2000. It was only for 4 weeks. It was a very short course, and there I met my husband. But I came back to Mongolia, Ulaanbaatar, and worked for a bit, and then my husband came.
So you met him in that 4 weeks, and then you came back. Did you miss him when you came back? Was it love at first sight?
Not really.
All right. I like that.
I shouldn't say that, but yeah, not really. But I guess you find out about people, and time goes by. Know them better, and you have similar interests and background. So.
I want to talk to you about this. In the book, your memoir, you quote the Mongolian proverb. You say, "The sky is too far away, the earth is too hard." You also say that after Billy's diagnosis, you needed to find the right way to talk about Down syndrome so people could understand that it wasn't your fault. What do you mean by this? Were you worried that people would think it was your fault that your son had Down syndrome?
I think worried would be the word, one of the words. I was shocked, I was upset, I wasn't ready for a diagnosis like that. And also it made me realize that I didn't know enough about people and children with disabilities and learning difficulties. I worked in many colleges and schools, and I've seen children with disabilities and learning difficulties. However, when you face it yourself immediately, here and now, and you know, there's no escape, there's nothing you can do, you have to accept it. And then you accept it, then you realize there are other barriers, other people's minds. The prejudice, the attitude, were not ready. So that's what I meant when I said, you know, worried. And traditionally, and I would say even now, even though people say developed countries, maybe Australia, New Zealand, America, Britain, people say developed, you know, to a certain extent developed, but depending on who you're talking to, people's minds are not ready to accept disability or learning difficulties. So that's what I meant. And also in Mongolian culture, there are different explanations about disabilities, and perhaps it's the unknown, I think. So therefore, in Gaelic in Scotland, they described children with learning difficulties or Down syndrome, for example. In the olden days, they called them children of God. The word is children of God. So I think in Mongolia, they tried to explain it that way. For example, it can be like reincarnation of someone who was perhaps a really reputable, good lama or priest. That kind of different explanations, because they didn't know the answers. Or mothers were blamed, perhaps. And it's not just Mongolia, I think it's around the world. And I was talking to someone in London last week, and they said, just a few streets from them, they came across that the mother is blamed, that kind of thing. So I felt it's important to talk about it and be a voice in some ways that, you know, it's not your fault. You can sit straight and look into people's eyes and be who you are, because these things happen. It's not your fault.
Thank you. Uuganaa, now you're here. This morning we have a producer from the BBC. Tell us why you're back in Mongolia, and what are you doing here with the BBC?
Yeah, I'm here with the BBC, which I'm very pleased about. We are doing a radio documentary for BBC Radio 4 and BBC World Service, and the meaning of Mongol. I wanted to find out how this term started, why it spread around the world, and did anybody do anything about it? And how did Mongolians react? Did they ever find out? And also what it means to people in Mongolia, being a Mongol, or the word Mongol is. And also I wanted to raise awareness about disabilities and learning difficulties and Down syndrome.
And you're taking the BBC, I mean, you're going back to your Sum in Zavkhan. Will you be visiting your family while you're here?
Yes, we are going to fly into Zavkhan day after tomorrow.
Are you excited?
I'm so excited. Sometimes I have to calm myself down. Because I can't believe that, you know, it's happening.
I can see you are excited.
Yes, I'm so pleased. And someone from America, a Mongolian lady, actually on Facebook, said that I'm glad the world is listening to you. And because some of them know that I have been talking about it, writing about it, and crying about it, and you know, spending sleepless nights about it, thinking, how can I go about this? It's a very complex subject.
Yes. Listen, you've won the Mongolian Woman of the Year Award in London. You won the Scottish Asian Women's Award in 2014 for achievement against all odds. Did you ever expect that your book would be so popular, that you would get such notoriety? I mean, all of this attention, does it come as a surprise to you, or are you welcoming it?
I'm welcoming it, and I don't know if it's my book, but when I wrote the book, I didn't expect it to be literally like I just wanted to do something that matters, if you know what I mean. You know, I wanted to make people think, and if it's doing that, that would be great. And if it's reaching people, I'm happy.
Uuganaa, I want to ask you, will there be another book after Mongol? I mean, you've done one. What do you do next year, the year after? Do you feel perhaps there's another novel, another memoir, now that you've written once? I mean, has it started something? Do you foresee yourself writing in the future?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would love to write more about, some people asked about my parents, so I might go before, you know, the life I talk about in the book, Mongol, or after as well. Now what we're doing, what we have achieved, what we would like to achieve. And there are other different ideas, yeah. I'd love to write also children's books as well.
Fabulous. So on to a sort of this makes me angry. It's not a good, not a happy thing to talk about. On Twitter, I've read, and I know that you've retweeted a few comments made by evolutionary biologist, renowned scientist Richard Dawkins, and he says it would be an immoral thing to bring a child with Down syndrome into the world, and if the mother realizes that she's carrying a fetus with Down syndrome, he recommends that the woman, the mother, should abort. What do you say to people like Richard Dawkins? And if you had to do it again, knowing that Billy would only live 3 months, and it was anguish for you and your family, would you do it all over again?
Yes, I would. I would do it, because he changed me for the better and stronger person. And I can't speak for other people, because I understand people's lives are different. You don't know their economic situations, cultural situations, and social attitudes, what they're going through in life. So what I would say is people can make their mind up themselves, and aborting and starting again, that's what his comment, I think, on Twitter.
It seems so inhumane. I mean, his comment shocked me. I couldn't believe what he said, and hurt me.
Yes, yeah, and I know some bloggers and campaigners in Britain and in America, and they were upset, and they did write their own articles and blogs and things, and people kept asking me, but I felt it's because Billy's not here. It's very difficult for me sometimes to comment on. And again, people's circumstances are different depending on where they live. And nowadays, people's minds are opening up, and there's so many opportunities. And also people forget that these comments are being picked up by people with Down syndrome themselves.
Yes.
They can understand.
Of course.
They can understand, and they can see that people, you know, are talking about, should we kill them before they were born?
And why do you exist? I mean, it's a horrific thing to say.
Yeah, so it's, again, it's a very difficult one to answer. But if we were to do it again, yes, definitely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Uuganaa, would you please read for me? I'd love to hear you read perhaps a few pages, some paragraphs, your favorite parts of your memoir. We'd love to hear you read.
Because now I'm back in Mongolia, and it's bringing back all the lovely memories of my happy times, and I guess different emotional memories as well, but I love of my childhood memories, so I'll read a bit about.
Thank you, Bayarla.
Until my sister Zaya was born in 1984, I was an only child growing up in Ulyaste, in the western reaches of Outer Mongolia. Both my parents came from large families with 9 and 8 brothers and sisters apiece, which meant that Zaya and I had 17 aunts and uncles, not to mention their wives and husbands. Because I was a first grandchild for my paternal and maternal grandparents, all of those aunts and uncles spoiled me rotten. Our traditional Mongolian house, known mostly in the West by its Russian name of yurt, was called a gir. Portable, felt-covered, wooden-framed and circular. I later came to realize that while my parents moved around a fair bit in my childhood, the good thing about living in a gir is that wherever you go, it's still the same house, the same home. Beautiful. Beyond that, our gir was special. Not many were decorated as ours was. I loved waking up to the beautifully hand-painted support poles, and above them the round ton, the single window at the top of the gir. Like the wooden poles, 2 columns and the ton frame were also hand-painted. There was something else too. My paternal grandparents had 7 boys and a girl, of whom my dad is the eldest. And grandfather told us that the beautiful big rug in the middle of our gir was bought by my grandparents when Dad was only 15. Our home was also full of photos of me that had been enlarged in Russia, where my uncles and aunts had studied. This was during the socialist era of worshipping our Russian brothers for helping us to rebuild a country and people that had for centuries struggled for independence from the Qing dynasty of China. I dreamt of going abroad where you could get chewing gum, which was then a rare treat in rural Mongolia. My long ash-brown hair, fairer than usual for Mongolian children, meant that if any of my friends felt like teasing me, they would call me Russian or a cat as an insult. Mongolians don't like cats. It's a superstition thing. They see dogs as honest and good friends to humans. But thanks to my uncles and aunts, I was one of the trendiest children in town wherever I went, showing off my colorful Russian dresses and pretty ribbons. Some of my happiest childhood hours were spent at an old desk, rescued from the school where my mum worked, and now squeezed into our single-room home that already contained 2 metal beds, 6 beautifully decorated chests, a matching wardrobe, a yellow bookcase, and a red kitchen cupboard ranged all around the wall. I felt very important doing my homework at that desk with my school books and drawing implements. I even tried to make my own space by stitching a Russian poster of Lenin bypassing capitalism to the wall hanging beside the black German lamp that Father had brought back from Berlin in 1980. He was a vet and had attended a professional development course in East Germany. I remember him bringing beautiful yellow leather boots for me and a television labeled Vesna from Moscow on his trip back. The television was a great attraction to my uncles and aunts, and after meal times in the evenings, our gir became something of a cinema.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very
amazing. Uuganaa, at the end of your book, you write several letters to your son, Billy, as part of the epilogue. You talk about a dream that you had taking him for a walk in his pram. You tell him about your visits to his grave. You also tell him that you hope one day the Mongolian ethnicity will not be confused with any genetic condition, and that people with disabilities and their loved ones won't have to hear the word Mongol used as an insult. I want to ask you, do you still write letters to Billy? And do you think you've changed people's attitudes in some small way already?
I hope so. The answer is I hope I'm changing, or I have changed a little bit, a few people, one or two even, people's attitude. And I don't write letters after 3 years. I wrote letters to Billy for 3 years. And since the book came out, I stopped. For somehow I felt like the book keeps him alive, and people are reading around the world, which is a great thing, and they remember Billy, and if they want to see what happened after, they can go and read my blog and how I felt about it.
You've been back and forth to Mongolia from the UK several times over the years. What are some of the differences that you notice between facilities for disabled people in Mongolia as opposed to some of the facilities you might have in Glasgow? There's a lack here? I mean, what sort of things do you notice about differences growing up or having disabled family members in UB as opposed to Glasgow?
Yeah, I think in Mongolia it's still developing. Well, it's developing everywhere around the world, and in Mongolia there are a lot more, compared to, for example, Scotland or Britain, a few more things to be done. And I know Down Syndrome Association, for example, was set up in 2008 by a few parents, including the Member of Parliament, Oyun, and they are doing a lot. And also after Billy, people are starting to write to me after reading my blog, letters to Billy, and I decided to set up a Facebook group for parents with children with disabilities and learning difficulties and adults. So there is a group on Facebook called Her Belchsangir in Mongolian. It's basically a gir with overflowing love, meaning wants to accept whoever is in our home and family. So that's the group is there, and there are over 100 members, and some people are, with cerebral palsy or Down syndrome, or there are some deaf people as well. And I mean, I'm not so active on it, but people write to each other, they have questions, and it's a secret group, so not many people can see, and they can talk about what they are experiencing in their life and share their experiences. And from that, I can see what's needed in Mongolia. And it looks like we need good nurseries, for example, for children to be integrated better into society. And I know a mother who set up a nursery because she couldn't find a nursery that her child she wanted to send to. So she set up a nursery herself, and we're visiting that nursery on Monday, tomorrow afternoon, and see how it's doing and what kind of things. And I mean, I don't have money or anything myself, obviously, but I hope to put people in touch with different contacts who would be able to help them in different, things, speech therapy, all these. It's not about all technical things, it's also about people's skills as well.
Of course. Uuganaa, I'm so grateful that you were with us today. I could keep chatting to you all day, but what I want to do now is, you've already signed my copy of the book, Bayırla. We have 2 copies of the book Mongol for Facebook fans of Talk With Me. If you'd like to email in, these have been signed by Uuganaa, and first 2 emails in, messages on Facebook, Talk With Me website, will get these signed copies. Mashik Bayırla. Now, one last thing, in the end of your book, the very end, after the epilogue, you have a recipe for buz dumplings, but you don't use mutton or lamb or beef. Tell me about the difference between your dumplings that you make in Scotland and the buz that you have here. You use a different ingredient.
Yes, in Scotland I use turkey, turkey meat.
Turkey?
Yeah, it's lovely.
Is it?
Yeah, it's really nice. Yeah, I use turkey and yeah,
How do you say turkey in Mongolian?
I know it's quite difficult one. I don't think many Mongolians have seen one.
I've never seen a turkey in Mongolia, but if I do see one...
Or even Scotland, to be honest, I don't think I've seen it yet.
Why turkey?
Maybe
Why
in supermarkets, but not... I felt it's less fattier, I guess, or healthier in some ways. And yeah, we do make it with lamb and beef.
Must be delicious.
Oh, it's lovely. It's lovely. And I had one. When I came yesterday, my sister made beautiful big plates of dumplings, with beef. It was just lovely.
I'm getting hungry.
Oh yeah, I was looking forward to that, and I was like,
oh, Hannah,
it's lovely.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
You're a lovely
very much.
lady. It's a pleasure meeting you and knowing you.
I wanted my boy to be a part of history in an archive, and years to come by people can read about him, and he existed.